Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, let's go. Happy Liberation Day. Does this mean we have a new holiday? Does this mean my kids got like a half day of school? Because they'll take it for any old excuse. By the way, Liberation Day, in reference to the big headline of the day, a bunch of Trump tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, are scheduled to take effect. We are going to be going to Donald Trump when he speaks live on this. You know, he speaks on an almost daily basis, and we almost never go live to it. Just to let you know what an important day this might be, because this is something actually happening. This isn't proposed cuts. This isn't the announcement of someone being appointed to some job. This isn't oops, we got to talk about the signal leak. This is actual things that affect you, your business, your pocketbook. And it'll be interesting to see if this shakes out. If these tariffs stick around, it's not going to be a net positive for anybody. But here's the trick. When we all throw tariffs on each other, we're in a contest to see which economy can hold its breath underwater the longest. And I would bet on America over any other economy in a tariff war, because I think that's a pretty damn good metaphor. Can we hold our breath, economically speaking, longer than a Canada, longer than a Brazil or a South Korea or any of these other unfair trade deals? You know, the one that I might have the most concern about is the super totalitarian ones, because, you know, the will of the people doesn't have to break. It would have to be the will of the Communist Politburo that breaks. But as far as, you know, who could tolerate more suffering, well, we're probably going to suffer the least out of this. It's going to be the people who've had unfair trade deals. And that's the interesting context you constantly have to remind yourself of, is that for people who have been getting preferential treatment for decades, getting equal treatment feels like discrimination. Now, there are some, look, I am a free trade guy, but we don't have free trade as one of the options right now. Either we do the reciprocal tariffs or we keep the unbalanced trade deals that we have going on right now. And so if this is just a mechanism to get us to a more free and fair trade, then this, in hindsight, will look like a genius move that, of course it worked. But the longer this goes on, the more negative effects it could have on the economy. And so this might end up being something that Trump has to withdraw from because it becomes politically unpopular. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have enough countries that go along and admit it and make some changes, that we'll be able to navigate half of this. We'll be able to resource the other half of it, or make some adjustments, or move the manufacturing back over here. And I don't think in the long run, like in a year from now, all the people say this is going to crash the economy, we're headed for a recession, we're headed for a collapse, they'll be on to the next story. I want to remind you what they were saying. When I say they, I mean the people that are acting like tariffs are the worst thing in the world now and it's going to ruin your life. What were they saying a year ago about tariffs? Well, we don't have to wonder. I have access to the internet. So do you. I am a very petty person with a long memory and kind of have revenge mind. And I also have the Audiotron 3000. Let's go back to last year. This is Janet Yellen. This is her in an interview in her capacity as the Secretary of Treasury under Joe Biden, talking about tariffs and tariffs that he was putting on. I guess these were magic tariffs that don't raise prices on anyone.
As you have seen, there have been some experts, some groups, the National Retail Federation among them, who've expressed concerns that it will be U.S. consumers who eventually end up paying for these tariffs. As you know, polling shows that rising prices are voters' biggest concern right now. So I'd ask you to speak directly to them. Will American consumers bear the cost of these tariffs?
I don't believe that American consumers will see any meaningful increase in the prices that they face.
As you have seen, there have been...
Yeah, there it goes. It's just repeating because it's on Twitter. So, yeah, look at the headlines you're seeing now, though. The headlines right now are warning about the catastrophic consequences of this tariff war that Donald Trump's putting on our allies. And another reminder here, not only were they saying the opposite about tariffs a year ago, just remember... What else were they saying a year ago? What was their big story a year ago? What could you not get away from 1 year ago as far as the headlines go? Because if you only go back 1 year and you go review the headlines, and you come back, and this, like just 1 year later, they're this far off. What makes you think they're right about the headlines today? Just as a reminder, this is the headlines from a year ago, like to the month.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
Remember they were saying this?
I think he's better than he's ever been.
Sharp as a tack.
President Biden has a photographic memory.
Sure
His understanding and mastery of a complicated geopolitical situation, remarkable.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I was sitting, 2 feet from him across the table, and he was, intense.
Have trouble walking sometimes?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
did I.
this is a 3-minute long montage, just to let you know how ridiculous do these headlines sound just a year out. Here is Jesse Waters from his Fox News show last night talking about, while they were telling you this guy's sharp as a tack, smartest guy in the room, photographic memory, what's the truth that we're learning now that the people that were around him in his orbit have no negative consequences for sharing the stories? Asked Jesse Waters from last night.
Every Democrat in D.C. has a story about Biden, and now they're all coming out. After the debate, Joe Biden was at a fundraiser at New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy's house, but he didn't know where to go. So his staff put fluorescent tape on the floor to guide Joe Biden around the room. But he was still confused.
Remember, while they were telling you he's sharp as a tack, smartest guy in the room, photographic memory, the reality was not just a little off. It wasn't like 45 degrees off. It was 180 degrees from this truth. The guy couldn't even remember where to go. Even if you put fluorescent floor tape in front of him, he would still get confused. So what makes you think they're right about the impact of the tariffs and what that's going to look like a year from now? And with all the juxtapositions going on, I hear people constantly saying, I don't understand. 5 years ago, they all loved the Tesla. Now they're setting them on fire. How do they do that? How do they just change on a dime like that? How do they even go through this transformation without admitting, well, hey, I must have been wrong before. Maybe I should reevaluate my worldview. The guy who can explain this better than anyone else, and if you read 2 of his books, you'll notice I use his verbiage almost every episode on The James Show. It's the great Evan Sayet. Welcome back, Evan. Now, Evan, you with me?
I am.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and start with that. We've all noticed that Elon Musk went from being a hero, a saint, to Jesus Christ, a Thomas Edison of the left, to now literally Hitler. And now, how can you make this change? It like in 1984, when they said we're at war with East Asia, then they just changed it, we're at war with Eurasia, and everyone was just cool with it and just pretended like they didn't know what the truth was 10 years ago. How does this play out in the real world with our neighbors?
Well, because the political left has no values. It's all about who is with them at any given moment. And I'm surprised you didn't make the bigger leap, which is to Donald Trump, who they loved for the first 70 years. I mean, this is a guy who Hillary Clinton was at his wedding. This is a guy who Hollywood so adored that if you wanted a cameo of a gracious billionaire, this was the go-to guy. This was a guy who NBC television for a decade gave his own television show. Now, if this was Adolf Hitler, either we need to reject the political left because they're willing to deal with Hitler until he runs for office, or he wasn't really Hitler at any point along the way. What changed was he became a threat to them. And it's the same thing with Elon. There's nothing that's different about the man from the days that they adored him to today, except now they see him as a threat.
Well, I also like the Elon example because it has the fact that we need to have electric cars to save the planet to burning electric cars. It's like, well, were you ever about saving the planet? It sounds like you were more interested in the politics behind it.
And then go back to the pandemic where we couldn't even meet one other person. We couldn't go and even if we socially distanced, we couldn't go to church. But the one exemption was if you're lighting a city on fire.
Well, oh, yeah, or you're going to George Floyd's funeral. You could go to that one.
Right, you can go to George Floyd's funeral. You can go to a protest. You could take over a city. You could do any of these things. You just couldn't kiss grandma goodbye in the hospital.
Another thing that made me think of you yesterday, Evan, was Cory Booker was breaking the record for the longest speech on the Senate floor. And my first question is, what is he filibustering? And I couldn't find an answer because there wasn't an answer. He just wanted to break the record for the longest speech. He wasn't doing it to stop any piece of legislation or whatever. And I thought that so perfectly just encapsulated a section of Team Blue where it's just all one big virtue signal.
Indeed. And if you noticed, I mean, obviously I didn't watch the entire 20 hours.
No one did.
Certainly no one did, including anybody in the Senate. But I saw enough and I read enough, and I even I went to my chat GPT and asked, and not once did he say what Democrats would do. It was all negative about, you have to worry about the threat to democracy. You have to worry about the Nazis, the fascists. You have to worry about Donald Trump. But at no point did he say, and here's our alternative. And one of the things that I point out, I believe in every book I've written, is that Democrats do not argue in the affirmative. They don't tell you what they're going to do, what their policy is, how it works, where it has worked in the past. It's all ignore everything that we've done to your cities, ignore everything we've done to your families, ignore everything we've done to the border, ignore everything we've done in the schools, because, hey, look over there. It's a Nazi. The only argument the left has, because they, as you know, my thesis, which is that they don't believe in anything. They are indiscriminate. And because they are indiscriminate, they don't have anything to affirm. They can't argue in the affirmative because if nothing's better than anything else, there is nothing to affirm. They always have to run in the negative.
So apply that same logic on how these people who stand for women's rights and LGBTQ or whatever rights and free speech and, you don't have to wear a headscarf. How are these people on the side of the Palestinians and not the Israeli state that allows them all the full complement of human rights for women and the letter people and the things they say they stand for, they cite against them in the Israel-Gaza conflict?
Right. Well, anytime you're talking about a revolution, you have to recognize that there are going to be multiple forces who join together to destroy what is, even though they have a very different plan for what to build upon the rubble. And so when you see these people who claim to be liberal, who claim to, my favorite is Queers for Palestine. What could queers and Palestine possibly have in common? And the answer is they both want to see the destruction of Western civilization to replace it with the utopia of their imagination. Now, the utopias they imagine are very, very, very different. But until they can destroy what is, they can't get to the utopia of their imagination. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so why? But then there are others who don't think that deeply, who simply recognize that if nothing is better than anything else, then the failure of the Palestinians to build a working society, the failure of the Palestinians to build a civilization, there's only two possibilities. It's because there's something wrong with Islam. But if you're not allowed to believe there's anything wrong with Islam, then the only possibility is that not only are they oppressed, but given the degree of their failure, they must be exceptionally oppressed.
All right. Good news. You told me to check out your latest work on your Substack. And, I'm kind of hesitant to go to people's Substack because usually there's a paywall. Yours was free.
Yeah, I'm not very smart that way.
All right. Round of applause for free Substacks.
That doesn't mean that they can't get a paid subscription, and a good number of my fans have, recognizing that it's sort of a way to contribute. But I also want to get the word out there, and so as long as I can, I will continue to keep it free.
All right. His latest work on the Say It Substack, sayit.substack.com. You were doing the classic explanation on how Jewish people can still vote Democrat.
Oh, indeed. I mean, it's been close to 20 years since I gave the original speech that led to it being called the Unified Theory of Liberalism. And not once in all those years have I had to come up with an ad hoc explanation because the liberals or the leftists surprised me. It truly is. You're right. I'm right in that once you understand what I say in that speech or in the first book, The Kindergarten of Eden, you know everything you need to know to not only understand but anticipate what the policies of the left is going to be.
Well, as a Jewish person yourself, how do you explain how so many people in your religion could possibly support the party that is on the side of the terrorists against you?
Yeah, the first thing you have to understand is that to be called a Jew, and I mean even to call yourself a Jew, you exit the voting booth and ABC News says we're taking an exit poll. Who'd you vote for? Okay, and how would you describe yourself? To be called a Jew is different than any other religion that's out there. Because in order to be called a Christian, you have to believe something. You have to believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. If you believe that, you're a Christian. And if you don't believe that, you're not a Christian. You wouldn't even call yourself a Christian. In order to be a Muslim, you have to believe something. You have to believe that the Quran is the final testament of God and Muhammad its perfect messenger. If you believe that, you're a Muslim. And if you don't believe that, you're not a Muslim. But to be called a Jew, you don't have to believe anything. All you have to do is be born to a Jewish mother. And therefore, to expect somebody who is in no way Jewish except by something they had no control over, their birth, to be moral or immoral or to be anything at all would be to believe that our policies are born into us and that we don't have free will, which I don't think there's either of us on this call or any of your listeners who believe that. Right? In fact, the way you know this is true is there are people who call themselves secular Jews. There's nobody who would call themselves a secular Christian because that's oxymoronic.
Right.
If you're secular, you're not a Christian. There are no secular Muslims. It's oxymoronic. And so only the Jewish faith, because we're not only a religion, but we're a culture and we're a nation. And so once you start to get into Jews who are actually Jews by choice and practice, all right, there's actually a direct horizontal diagonal line that the more Jewish you are by faith and practice, the more likely you are to reject the immorality of the Democrat Party. And so the Reform Jewish community, which is barely Jewish, as the name suggests, reform, they seek to reform a scripture to fit their politics as opposed to changing their politics to reforming their politics to fit scripture. But as you go from the Reform community to the conservative Jewish community to the Orthodox Jewish community, the non-Jewish Jews vote 100% Democrat. The Reformed Jews vote 99% Democrat. Conservatives almost always for Republicans, and Orthodox Jews entirely Republican. So it's not Jews who vote Democrat, it's non-believing Jews who do.
Well, also the fact that it's called the unified field theory of liberalism is because it is so universal here, because you could just take that one stance, the Israel stance. And, you have on college campuses here at UT Dallas, I'm sure there were some Jewish students who were pro-Palestinian. It's like, excuse me, they kind of want to kill you. But then you also had some gay students there. They kind of want to kill you. And then you had some women students there. It's like, they kind of want to put you in a headscarf and make you property of a husband. It just keeps repeating itself over and over. And you saw it yesterday where Cory Booker's out there breaking the record for the longest filibuster or longest speech. The previous longest speech was by a Democrat in the 50s when he was filibustering the Civil Rights Act. That was by one person. The longest filibuster by multiple people, 74 days, that was in 1964 with the next Civil Rights Act, also done by a Democrat. And so when you see that these people can go and support these institutions that have historically seek to destroy them, it almost is a pattern you expect at this point.
Oh, indeed. And one of the questions you have to ask yourself is why Israel, of all places, this tiny little liberal democracy. We're talking about a place not only with freedom of speech, for all, including Muslims, and freedom of assembly. But we're talking about gay pride parades in every major city. We're talking about a nation that had a woman prime minister back in the 1960s, surrounded by the most misogynistic, homophobic, xenophobic, and James, I do believe even a little bit anti-Semitic.
Yeah, we saw that coming.
Okay. and so why, of all the nations in the world, is this the one that they seek to strangle to death economically through boycott, sanctions, and divestment? They don't say that about any other nation. Why this one? And the answer is, the greater the evil, the Palestinian evil, the more the Democrat, the liberal, has to champion it. Because if they're not bad, then they must have been provoked. And given the horrors that have been provoked, well, the provocations must have been unparalleled. This is why they call the Jews genocidal, when in fact it's Hamas that has genocide written into their constitution.
All right, there, he's the great Evan Sayet. His book is The Kindergarten of Eden. He has several, but that's the one you start with. If you're not ready to buy the book, send me an email or a message on Facebook, and I'll give you a link to the speech that he mentioned. And after you watch that 40-minute speech, you'll probably want the book. So just send me an email, james@wbap.com, or reach out on Facebook. Thank you very much, Evan.
Of course, James. Good talking to you.
Ideally, me as a evil free market capitalist pig, and I say that very much tongue-in-cheek, my ideal situation would be free trade, very low, if tariffs at all. I'm talking like 1 or 2% across the board. But that's not what's on the table. What we have going right now is we have low tariffs for our products, but there's many nations out there that have high tariffs on our products. So we don't have an even playing field. We don't have fair trade. We don't have free trade. And so this is a classic negotiating tactic that you'll read in almost any business book, including Art of the Deal. If you ever read that, he talks about one of the great negotiation techniques in business history is you take a situation that the guy you want to negotiate with is where he's comfortable in it, you make it uncomfortable, and then you provide him that solution. And that's not something that is endemic to Donald Trump or he made up. He's sort of crib noting the classic book from Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he talks about how to make business deals, how to make friends, how to network, all that stuff. Well, one of the chapters in there was how he made so many great deals happen, Carnegie, the original guy. And so you see Donald Trump sort of echoing, it's just a classic business strategy. If you're a fan of football, it's like running it up the middle. This is the most normal thing in the world. And so we don't have the ideal of free and fair trade. What we have is a guy that's trying to make some pain points to get some people to come to the table and change the playing field that right now is unfair to American markets. Now, it's one thing when we're the hyperpower of the world and we have a bunch of third world countries that we're trying to bring along. We can't exactly squeeze all these people. But this has been the regime and sort of the expected playing rules since World War II. And all of these countries aren't little primitive backward third world hellholes anymore. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a positive. I mean that as a compliment. A lot of countries have made a lot of progress. They're no longer backwards. They no longer need training wheels on their Schwinn. They don't need to sit at a high chair in the table. They can sit in a regular chair with the big boys at the big table. And it's time for us to stop being so generous with the working Americans out here that a lot of people think are getting an unfair deal. Now, on the long term, if all these tariffs stay in place and nothing changes in a year, we're not going to be very happy with it. But the real question is, can our economy withstand these new barriers, these new protections, these new hurdles to trade, and last longer and be more robust than the people on the other side of the trading block? And that's the real question. The perfect metaphor for this is, can the American economy hold its breath longer than these other countries? And so what you just missed, right as we went to commercial there, we were listening to him live. He pulled up this chart, and it was huge. It's like 4 feet tall. And it was listing out all these countries and what they tariff our products versus what we're going to tariff their products. And China has like a 90% tariff on American products. And, they was going through like Denmark and Bangladesh. And no, it's Vietnam that has a 90% tariff on all our products. And so starting tomorrow, we're going to be tariffing their products at just half. It's not even really reciprocal. They're still getting a pretty sweetheart deal. The question is, do you think this is going to work, or do you think this is going to hurt more than it helps? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Christine in Frisco, what do you think about Liberation Day and the Trump tariffs?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Christine.
I'm in full support. I think that it is going to hurt us in the beginning, but long term, it is necessary for us to make sure that we are completely independent. And I just wish that we would have maybe staggered it in, though. That's my only fear. We kind of came in brash, but I think that was Trump's strategy to show that, hey, this is what we're coming in for, and perhaps, like you said, negotiate it down, or have an exit strategy, or have something, in place. That's my only fear, is that, we just kind of came in really big.
Well, a year from now, how do you think you'll feel about it, Christine?
I think it's going to hurt. I think 6 months to a year, there's going to be some pain. I think after that, though, once we have a lot of our plants up and running, we kind of get used to the product. And I think also the countries start to respond a little differently to us. I think we'll be in a better place.
Yeah, I think, part of me thinks this could all be done in a month, because after the tariffs actually go into place and goods start to have the charge on them and decisions, change on who's doing business with who, this isn't going to hurt just like the everyday people here in America or the lowest of the low in these other countries. It's going to hurt the oligarchs, the term that's been way overused as of late, but it's going to hurt the people at the top who own these businesses, the ones who are doing the trades, the one who has the big, international corporations at their behest. And they're going to lean on their leaders to get rid of this, because this isn't going to be good for really anybody economically. So there's a small part of me that thinks this could all be resolved in a month, Christine.
I don't know. That's very optimistic. A month. I'm not sure of month, but I do think that we're going to see, as long as we have an aligning plan together, a strategy where we're going to really start producing more American product. I think that, we might leave those tariffs in. I think we might just become a stronger nation overall. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be resolved in a month, but I think that we have to wait and see. I don't like tariffs. I like free trade. I land where you land, James, but
that's not on the table, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and this is necessary, and there is a security concern. We can't be relying on other countries. We're relying on them way too much, and I am very, very pleased with Trump announcing the tariffs. Like I said, I just wish that we kind of stair-stepped it, but we'll see.
Well, you sound awfully young to be so in-depth in economics. You sound like a younger James. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that.
Bye.
Bye. All right, your thoughts. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Trump announces reciprocal tariffs for Liberation Day. Will this help more than it hurts? What do you think we're going to say about this in a year's time? A new piece of information he just added while you were listening to some very important messages there, is that his next big plan for the economy, what are you going to do next? He says he's going to do the largest tax cut in history. Okay. What do you think? Do you think this is going to work? Do you think this is going to blow up in his face? And I think we're not going to know today, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. But I think a year from now, we're going to look back on this and either be really happy or really upset. But I think this is all going to get resolved within a matter of months. And we're not going to talk about this again. We'll probably forget it ever happened. But what do you think? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. This is Tate in Fort Worth. What do you think about the Trump tariff plan?
Well, it's good, and I think it will work because it worked before, but there's something that I don't think anybody's thinking about, or it doesn't get reported. When all the manufacturing moved overseas, it moved overseas because cost of doing it was too high. Labor was too high. What they were paying the people got out of hand, and they couldn't do it and couldn't make a living. There's numbers of companies right here in Texas that have literally locked the doors or moved to another state because cost of paying employees to do it kept going up.
Right.
And in the automotive world, which is what I'm in, we had some killer connecting rods. They were costing around $1,200. Everybody said that was too high. Now that stuff has been taken overseas and cloned, they've come back and they're selling for half price, $4.75 to $5.25, and they work, but they're not the same thing. And it's all the way through the market. And something that I think caught some manufacturers by surprise is one piston company moved to Mexico because they could get it done cheaper, lost a lot of employees in the States, and they wanted to bring the stuff back to Texas, and they can't bring their equipment back. And there's a company in the gun world that I tried to find a gun on, so I called the manufacturer. They had taken it to one of the southern countries, and they said, well, those people just don't get in a hurry, and they just don't work that fast, so we only get so many guns produced. And I said, well, why don't you bring it back? And he said, we can't bring our equipment back. We can't bring our technology back.
All right, Tate, in a year from now, over in Fort Worth, are you going to be loving this or regretting this?
I don't think it's really going to affect us down here. If the gas prices go down and everything goes down, I think where it's going to be the big effect is going to be in the big unions, the big manufacturing. He's talking about building ships here. He's talking about building all the stuff here. All the people that go to work to build the foundries, to build the shipyards and all that, what happens to them once that's done? Because they might not turn into the employees that go to work in building the ships. But I'm sensing cautious optimism here, Tate. You think that's a fair description? Yeah. I mean, Trump made it work once. I'm for Trump, but I just see that if minimum wage goes up $2, then everybody above that says we're worth more than $2.
I hear what you're saying.
All that keeps happening.
Yeah.
That's why the people went overseas.
All right.
The unions were
Tate, I got to run. I got to give up the show to get you a news update. But thank you very much. That was Tate in Fort Worth. What do you think? Now, a lot of people are focusing on the manufacturing aspect. A lot of people are focusing on, this is a way to target people who are not treating us fairly. But I also believe that so many of the issues that we're having in today's society, at the root cause, has an economic solution. And when you look at the sort of protectionism or the greasing of the wheels or the patting on the back or the cronyism or the unfair trade, I think tariffs are half of the issue. The other half is subsidies. It's the push and the pull. And either you're going to push away imports or you're going to subsidize and pull away local preferred industries. And I think we're seeing half of that tug of war being had out with this new tariff system. But let's not forget the subsidy system, because there's two ways countries protect their native industries or punish foreign industries, and that's tariffs and subsidies. And with all of these, you don't just take in the initial cost as it is on paper. There is secondary effects that are a lot of times are harder to measure, if not immeasurable. And I think one of the greatest examples of that, because I was going to talk about this anyway, even if Trump didn't come out live, this is the same thing we were going to talk about with the subsidies that are being proposed for the movie industry here in Texas. It's not a good thing, economically speaking, to have the government going out there picking winners and losers. And so part of my concern as a free market capitalist pig is that. But we don't have my ideal of free trade. Let me just give you an example of how, seemingly well-intended protectionist policies can have huge negative consequences to the rest of us. And I think the most obvious one that you see in your everyday life is sugar. Sugar? No one's talking about sugar, James. Well, stick with me here. If you go to the store and you buy sugar, here in America, it's about 38 cents a pound. Pretty damn cheap, isn't it? So if you go out and you buy a 5-pound bag of sugar, what are we looking at? Like $2? Ooh. Now, everywhere else on planet Earth, it's about half that price. So a 5-pound bag of sugar, instead of being $2, it's $1 everywhere else. Okay, well, that's not going to make any big dent in your grocery budget. But if you're a candy manufacturer or you're some other food maker or you make sodas, then that is a huge deal. Then the primary ingredient, your number one ingredient, doubles in cost. And so when you hear people tomorrow and the next day and in months in the future say, How come we use high fructose corn syrup here, but if you get a Mexican Coke, it has sugar in it? Or if you go to Europe, they don't use high fructose corn syrup. They use actual pure cane sugar. Well, we need to outlaw high fructose corn syrup. No, we need to get rid of the protectionist subsidies and trade barriers to sugar. We are protecting our sugar industry here. Domino Sugar here in America probably would not exist without these protectionist policies. So if you wonder why our health is so distorted, it's not because the evil capitalist pig corporations are choosing poison to kill their customers. They're almost forced to do so by ignorant economic policies done at the federal level. So this isn't just tariffs. This isn't just, okay, well, now your Apple Watch is going to cost 5% more. There are unforeseen and unheralded and even unnoticed secondary distortions that happen because of these tariffs. So I'm really not sure how we're going to feel about this in a year. I think this is something that will wind itself down in a few months, but what do you think? 800-288-9227. This is Martin in Frisco. You're on WBAP. Do you think this whole tariff thing is going to work out good?
Yes, actually I do in the end. Donald Trump tried this in 2016, and I don't think he knew exactly how to manage it as well. And it depends on what studies you look at. It did affect the GDP adversely, the inflation. But in 2019, inflation actually went down. And I think the bad thing in the end was it affected conservative voting in the end, too, adversely. But it's chess, it's not checkers. And if he manages this properly this time, I think it'll be a great thing for the United States and everybody, all the people of the United States, and also voting for conservatives as well in the end.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get some good answers on this pretty soon. I bet by the end of a week or two, we'll hear of a whole bunch of countries who have already changed their mind and capitulated. I'm just worried about the big dogs. What's China's reaction going to be to this? What's India's reaction? Mexico and Canada, you know? What's your thoughts on some of these guys who are getting a really sweet deal out of us actually moving towards something more fair?
Well, last time he put tariffs up to 30 to 50% on all those same countries: aluminum, steel, Canada, Mexico, China, even India. And I think it cost India $240 billion. So, again, if he plays it right and they cooperate with us better than they did before, I think it'll be better for the whole the world. I mean, all countries involved.
I hear you. Well, that's the optimistic scenario that I'm hoping for. Thank you very much. That's Martin in Frisco. Let's ask Doug in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP. What do you think about the new tariffs?
Well, James, I think it's a great deal. I understand tariffs. You know, some people, I think the Democrats think it's like Chicken Little syndrome, the sky is falling. However, if you look at the supply side of economics, there is at least 3 to 6 months in the pipeline right now of all goods and services and products. So there's not a big worry until you get in maybe to the middle of the summer.
Yeah, see, so you're describing the hold your breath metaphor. Can our economy hold its breath longer than the Chinese, than the Indians, than, you know, all the people in Europe and Russia and everyone that we're battling in this little tariff tiff like Vietnam? Can we hold our breath longer? I think we can.
I believe so. I believe in, you know, he's a tactician. He knows how to work the things. So what will happen is that we have the propensity to have a lot more leverage in that respect than they do. So I'd say within a month or two, you'll see folding of some of these countries that just charge us exorbitant amounts of money. I mean, we've got the leverage there. He knows the cards. He knows where they are, and he'll play them.
All right. I'm getting to the point now where I'm going to ask, does anybody not think this is a good idea? Thank you very much, Doug, because I have nothing to argue with you on that. And it's fun to have people like reaffirm your opinion and whatnot. But also, anyone disagree? I don't want to just sit here, no, you're right. No, you're the best. No, you're so smart. But that's where we're at. Angie, Decatur, you're on WBAP. What do you think about the Trump tariffs?
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to argue with that man either. Ditto to what he said. And I don't understand it all, but one thing I do know, I used to not really follow politics ever until, you know, President Trump came into the picture, and he shed the light on all the stuff that the guys who have been benefiting from what they've been doing to us, they liked it when we didn't pay attention. They liked it when, people just didn't care. Not that they didn't care. I think they just didn't think about it.
Oh, of course not. Well, we didn't have to, because the previous presidents would go to some other country and they would make some trade deal and they say this is a big win for both people. And we never dove into it. And we never were made aware that Vietnam has a 90% tariff on all of our imports, but we're only charging them 10, So this wasn't even something that was in the discussion before. And I'm so glad we're having something that feels kind of nerdy, nuanced. I mean, it's not boring, but it is kind of like black and white and not sexy. But I mean, this is what has been affecting our pocketbooks and our money and our business and creating all kinds of distortions. And like I mentioned with the sugar thing, ruining people's lives. And I think it's interesting to see where we'll be in 6 months to a year from now.
Well, and if you think about it, the alternative was what? Now we know. Are we going to just continue to let everybody take advantage of us like that? And that the alternative would be to just let things go the way they are.
Well, for all the people that want equality and fairness, that I think that's what we're working toward. And look, it makes sense that if you're playing golf against a 9-year-old boy, that you would give him a big fat handicap or let him tee off closer to the hole. But when they grow up, you got to start treating them equal, or now you're just screwing yourself.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, Angie. Good stuff. I love all the amateur economists out there today. Y'all are doing good. You're not embarrassing yourself, making some good points. Anyone disagree? Brent Weatherford, you're on WBAP. Do you disagree?
James, no, I don't. But here's what I'd like to see. I wish Trump would put a big chart out there. You remember the flip charts with Perot and all that? Put something out there that shows each country.
Whoa, he did that.
From them.
Whoa, he did that. He had like a 4-foot tall chart. I tried to describe it earlier. Maybe you missed it. But yeah, as soon as we went to commercial after that first little initial audio that we were joining him on, he did pull out a big chart that said like China and Vietnam and Bangladesh and Canada and all these other countries and what tariffs they had on us versus what we're going to put on them. And for a lot of them, we say they're reciprocal. A lot of them were still pretty generous. Vietnam has a 90% tariff on all of our imports. Donald Trump, starting at midnight tonight, I think it was a 46%. I don't know why I didn't do 45 because that would be half. But we're going to start putting a 46% tariff on imports from Vietnam. And so, yeah, he did the chart. It's great. I know I can't visually show you because this is the radio, but if you go online...
Yeah. Well, I don't watch TV. I listen to you guys all day long. I just wish he would do that on all the countries so everybody, even the left, could look at it so they could see, okay, all we're trying to do is right the ship. We're not trying to, turn over the Titanic or anything else. We're just showing you what we're doing. So you've already righted it, and I appreciate it, young man.
Well, I can't get credit for that. It was Donald Trump that knew in advance you would want to see a chart and had one ready. But if you want to see it, you can send me an email or a Facebook message. I'll send you to the chart if it's not already floating around your social media. All right, coming up at the end of the month, the last Saturday of April 26th, we're doing WeatherCon. It's brought to you by Blue Ribbon Roofing. And it's the thing where every year we go out and we give you a chance to meet Brad Barton and Hal J. And there's other people from WBAP there. But there's all kinds of demonstrations. Some of them for the kids, like little science demonstrations for your kiddos. And then for the adults, weather enthusiasts, they go to the little theater at the Frontiers of Flight Museum, and you get some presentations from National Weather Service people and storm hunters. Those guys are nuts, but they got great video and stuff to show. And there's all kinds of like exhibits and booths and stuff set up, so it's family friendly. It's absolutely free. Thank you to Blue Ribbon Roofing. And it's all happening April 26th. It's the Frontiers of Flight Museum. It's over by Love Field. Your phone knows where it's at, so just ask your phone. But it opens up at 9:30. It lasts until 1:30 p.m. Come on out, say hi, meet myself, meet Brad Barton, our meteorologist. And I believe Fox 4, their meteorologist, Dan Henry, is going to be out there as well. And did I mention it's free? That's the big one. Free. And family friendly. I got 4 kids, and it's hard to find something for all of us to do together. That's one of them. 2025 WeatherCon from Blue Ribbon Roofing and WBAP.